is going to be about as far away from the pure artistic impulse as possible, so it's great that I get to follow my friend and colleague, Mark. So I'm here to talk about Thor, that's my name, heroes and superheroes, and a few recent trends. And by recent trends, I mean everything we're going to talk about in the next few minutes is from within the past 60 days or so. So one recent trend is that the most popular new name for newborn boys is Thor. That's the recent trend. And for this, we have Thor to thank the movies from the Marvel franchise, Part 1 and Part 2. But I'm not really here to talk about that Thor from Asgard. I'm here actually to talk about Thor Heyerdahl, the great 20th century explorer. And I'm here to also talk about the movie recently made about Thor Heyerdahl, which was Kon-Tiki. The English language version of that film just opened and followed on the footsteps of the Norwegian version of that film, which actually opened in 2012 and was a nominee for Best Foreign Picture. Why are there two versions of the same film? The answer is simple: funding. So they originally intended to release Kon-Tiki in English for the mass market that would reach, but then they found great funders in Norway who only supported projects that promoted Norwegian heritage, and so and they dictated that the film be made in Norwegian. So for $2.8 million, an extra 10 weeks of filming, and thankfully a bilingual cast, they shot two versions of the film simultaneously, the Norwegian version and the English version. So I'd like to turn to another friend of Thor and another superhero, Iron Man. As you know, Iron Man 3 just opened, and what you may also know is that there are two versions of Iron Man 3. There's the English version here, and there's the Chinese version. Why are there two versions? The answer is simple: to access the second largest and fastest growing film market in the United States, China. So in the English version, there's a character, Dr. Wu. Dr. Wu has a single line. In the Chinese version, Dr. Wu's character is expanded to be one of the main players in the plot. And by doing this, the producers of Iron Man 3 satisfied the Chinese government's criteria for the inclusion of Chinese content, and then therefore for the release in the Chinese market. And that's a lot of revenue in the Chinese market. So I have a question. What lengths are we meant to go to access capital or to access revenue? So let's turn to another example, which is Veronica Mars. The very popular TV show recently announced that it was going to produce a full-length film, right? And they funded that, in part, on the micro-site Kickstarter. You say, what's so micro about Hollywood producers raising $5.7 million online? And isn't Kickstarter, after all, supposed to be for grassroots projects and sort of charitable projects? Well, if so, no one told Zach Braff, because he followed suit and raised $2 million for his new film on Kickstarter as well. Again, what links are we meant to go to raise capital and to raise revenue? Why did Zach Braff turn to Kickstarter? Simple. He asked his fans to provide funds to make the film when perhaps a studio or major funder would not. So let's move to home entertainment for a minute. Oh, there's Zach Braff, sorry, missed his superhero picture. To a new superhero, Reed Hastings, CEO of Netflix. Now, Reed Hastings has been in the news a lot lately. You may remember a couple years ago, Reed Hastings was not so super. Reed Hastings tried to move his company to an all-digital format, and this backfired. His members protested, and stock plummeted from $298 a share to $53 a share. This week, however, this month, Reed Hastings has been in the news a lot because why? He's decided to add original content to the Netflix business model, starting with House of Cards. Now, things are going really well. Stock at Netflix is back up to over $200 a share, and all the business journals are saying that Reed Hastings has joined the Silicon Valley pantheon of great innovators. So to recap, let me see if I've got this right. A Norwegian film with homegrown funding is released in 2 languages. An American film expands a Chinese character to be released in China. Big Hollywood producers get funding on a microsite online, and a struggling DVD company resurrects itself with original content. Wow. What does any of this have to do with live stage performances? Well, first of all, I say, it gives me pause, with all of these options, how does anyone leave their house and come to a live stage performance anymore, right? Right. But there's more. I think there's a lesson to be gleaned from our counterparts in film and TV, and this is what I think it is. We have to be willing to adopt a user mindset in making our key decisions, and in also be willing to adapt our art and our business practices to meet our users where they're at. And what do I mean by users? I mean funders and audiences, both anybody who supports our work. Now, clearly there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Clearly innovation isn't always the answer, because sometimes innovation is actually a bridge too far. But this is what a user mindset is about. I think it's about abandoning faulty assumptions. I think it's about fresh data. I think it's about surveys. And I think it's about consumption patterns and presentation formats that did not even exist yesterday. That's what I think a user mindset is about. And perhaps, if we adopt a user mindset, some of those users will abandon pixels and bits and actually come to a live stage performance when they hadn't before. So let me close by returning to our main character, Thor Heyerdahl. Now, quickly, in 1947, he was looking to recreate a journey across the Pacific Ocean to prove a point about the migration of ancient peoples. This was a very brave idea, because he was going to recreate a primitive raft with balsa logs lashed together by rope and go across the entire Pacific Ocean, right? That's brave, and that's something very immediate and very passionate that I think actually theater people appreciate. That's someone with an idea and a vision, and they're going to go for it. Except that he went for the most obvious funding source possible, National Geographic. And they refused him. They rebuffed his proposal. Why? Because they said the journey was too risky. Now, history tells us that, in fact, Thor Heyerdahl did make it across the Pacific, and he did find funding. And from that, we have a lesson to learn. And I think it's the same lesson that we learned from the producers of Iron Man 3, the same lesson we learned from Zach Braff, the same lessons we learned from Reed Hastings, and that is to be willing to sometimes expand our idea of who are our supporters, who are our users, and take a lesson from the most important superhero of all, the user. So I'm going to close with that and say that if any of you are willing to commit a sort of serious amount of funding, I will repeat this entire presentation for you in Norwegian. Thank you.